This is Pick and Sticks, the first tutorial on game development that I ever watched, and the resource I used to make my first complete game in 2010. I've been enamored by video game creation ever since. Now this game may not look like much, but that's because it isn't. I too was disappointed to learn that to create a well-polished, good-looking game you need teams of hundreds of people, but as with any rule, there are of course exceptions. Meet both exception number 1 and my middle school role model. You may not recognize his face, but you've probably heard of him at some point. This is Notch, or Marcus Persson, the creator of Minecraft. Now most people watching this have likely heard of or played Minecraft before, but you may be humbled to learn that it was developed almost entirely by one person, Marcus Persson. Though he has since passed the torch on to other developers, me and I'm sure several other game creators still look at his success story with admiration. Today, being an indie developer is becoming more and more common. A few of my heroes in the field are Edmund McMillan, Jonathan Blow, and Mike Bithell, but I pretty much look up to every developer who isn't Phil Fish. It's just so inspiring how these people manage to accomplish so much with so little. These talented programmers, artists, and musicians either work solo or on a small team and manage to put together and publish a finished game, which is so much easier said than done as previously mentioned. So how do they do it? Well, before I get into that, I'll first show you games of my own and tell you why they're garbage. Just looking at these games, you can already tell they're visually unappealing, and though this may not be noticeable, the controls could be considered choppy at best. Okay, not a great start. Let's hear that soundtrack. Holy sh**. Aside from the obvious experience gap between me and the aforementioned developers, why do my products look so bad and theirs don't? The key is time. Each of the games I just presented were developed for a tri-annual competition called Ludum Dare, all under 48 hours. Okay, now that we know how long it takes to make a bad game, how long does it take to make a good one? For small teams and individuals, even the simplest games take an incredible amount of time. Both Thomas Was Alone and Super Meat Boy took 18 months of development. Braid in Stardew Valley took 4 years. Fez took a grueling 5. Now onto my own game. Vinci Game is a project I've been working on for a little under a year, almost entirely solo. It's gone through rough patches and even a complete rewrite about 5 months in, but it's something I'm really proud of and I would like to walk you through. Keep in mind that the game is still in its infancy, and I am by no means a professional artist, musician, programmer, or game designer. Where to begin? I suppose I should start by addressing why I keep calling it Vinci Game. Most games before they're released are assigned a working title that is later changed as the game gets further along in development. For instance, 2 games that I've already shown, Minecraft and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, were known as Cave Game and Zelda U respectively before release. The story to Vinci Game is relatively simple. Vinci and 5 companions must brave the treacherous path ahead to restore learning to the world, saving a sacred quartet known as the League of Learners from the main antagonists of the game, the Unlearners. I know that still leaves countless questions unanswered, but to be honest, I wouldn't really be able to answer them. When making a game, the story, though important, isn't really the main focus during development, since things change and limitations are set. As for why I chose Vinci and several other teachers as the main protagonists in this game, well, I can't really answer that either. It started as a joke, but the charm of it all got the better of me. As for the game itself, it takes inspiration from some of my favorite games, namely Nintendo titles such as Paper Mario and Earthbound. See the resemblance? Well, maybe not entirely, but the connection is definitely there. Part of being an indie developer is knowing where to cut corners and where to set your focus, because at the end of the day, you can't do everything. Since my biggest strength is programming and game design, it's my goal to make Vinci Game a fun experience with gameplay and combat more than anything. This doesn't necessarily mean I'm letting art and music fall by the wayside, but what it probably does mean is that for the finished product, I won't be creating the assets. Assets, in layman's terms, are essentially everything that's put into a game, meaning art, models, music, etc. It may not have come across entirely before, but everything from the grass Vinci walks through to the enemies he battles, even the music that plays in the background, has to be built from the ground up for a video game with virtually no budget. Right now the game is pretty bare bones, as you can probably tell. There's no real sky and the world just looks kind of empty, not to mention the rampant bugs. Despite all that, I'd argue that Vinci game is actually chock full of features, especially for a project with only about 7,500 lines of code. They're just ones you would normally take for granted in a game. For instance, there's a full-fledged combat system, inventory management, saving and loading, character swapping. I could go on. Before I get carried away, I think I'll just highlight a few of my favorite aspects in the game, and explain what they'll look like when they're fully implemented. For starters, every playable character, or teacher, has a special ability that they can use in the overworld that will later also be usable in combat. Vinci tells the player about the surrounding area, usually in his cynical yet humorous way. Callahan smokes and then hurls a Cuban cigar behind him. Maze throws a paper shuriken, since after all, he is a black belt. Klein does a squat, which gives him the ability to run at high speeds. Hawkins has the ability to shrink and grow exponentially, allowing him to go under small gaps. And finally, Swope does some percussive maintenance with his fists. Probably the strangest feature to enjoy in a game is the pause menu, but when you're going to be accessing it a lot like in Vinci game, it's crucial to get it right. I chose a simple design with a carousel at the top. The art is subject to change, but the implementation of the trigonometric functions that make it spin are likely here to stay. Finally, by far the most important feature in any game that does or ever will exist, the grass. Now you may think I'm kidding. Well, I am, but not by much. Similarly to the pause menu, it's important to get the grass just right because of how often it'll occur. Grass in a game should be subtle, and though this field in Vinci game has a long way to go, I've already spent about 4 days on getting the blades just right. Obviously there's a lot more to a game than just its features, but my art is bland and my sprites and models aren't great. Here's a little preview. That should just about wrap up the 20 hours of footage I recorded of me making the scene for this demonstration of Vinci game, which will hopefully drive home the point that I'm really trying to make here. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was the next big indie hit. Though Vinci game is making progress, it's slow progress. I hope to have it done by 2019, but really, only time will tell. If you have any questions about game development, Vinci game, or you just really want to try a buggy demo, you can email me at thepixelaborateteam@gmail.com.